Please welcome Scott Russell! Hey, buddy. Boy, man. Good to see you. You well?
Good.
Dude, I firmly believe this. You are like the triple threat. You could do anything. You could do news, you could do sports, you could do whatever. But you seem to get the most enjoyment out of being with young people going after their dreams. I find that so cool that you did. But where do you think that comes from in you?
I grew up at a summer camp in Haliburton, Ontario.
Do you mean that your parents dropped you off once and decided to never pick you up, and you actually were raised there by the Wolves?
I cried like a baby, George, and they were never going to come and take me away.
But the Timberwolves took you in.
Exactly. And you know, I lost my paddle on the first day. And my camp counselor was a great big football player by the name of Dave Haddon, went on and played for the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah.
And he stood up in front of the lodge and he said, "Has anybody seen Scott Russell's paddle?" And they found it. And from that moment on, I had a friend.
Yeah.
And he was a guy who was involved in sport. And that's why I love sport. And that's why I like what it does for young people.
So if he was a priest, you would be in the seminary? Is that what do you mean?
No. You know what it was? It was, I learned everything that I know through sport.
Yeah.
And I think that kids learn everything they know, most of what they know, through sport. They learn to compete. They learn to be part of a team. They learn to win and lose and do it with grace and dignity. And to me, what happens on the field of play is life's greatest classroom.
What's interesting about that is I agree with you in principle for the most part. I also think that for a whole group of kids, and this is why I think the sports day in Canada is important to do, is that athleticism in sports is the worst thing about your childhood. When I was a kid, most of my friends, everybody, we hated gym class. We were terrified of it because that culture, that Lord of the Flies thing, you know, by the time we read Lord of the Flies, most of us had already experienced it in gym class.
Yeah.
And so you have that other side of sport that we have to figure out how to get all these kids who aren't going to go on to be the captain of whatever team,
no,
guy or girl, right? So is that what you look at when you look at those other kids who weren't on the proper path?
Yeah, you have to, with children, let them be not only literate, they have to be physically literate. They have to understand their own bodies, what their bodies are capable of, what potential they have within them, how to relate to other children. That's really important, and that's why we should engage in sport and play. I mean, people differentiate between play and sport. I think they're the same thing. It's in us. It's instinctual to play at something, to play a game. And just naturally, you win or you lose, and you got to figure out how to do it.
You're going to do the 2014 games in Sochi, which is fantastic, right? I know how big a deal it is. If you don't know how much of a real deal Scott is, just watch this clip after he ran the torch. Watch this.
So when it happens, and you really get down to what the flame represents, that spirit of unity, of peace, it's very emotional, I gotta say.
Oh, Scott, of course it is. That's beautiful. Listen, I'm sorry. I'm all caught up in that with you too.
You know, listen, I get like this. Everybody who knows me, I get like this about the Olympics.
That's amazing, dude. It's the real deal.
Yeah. I never, you know, I cried like a baby on national TV with Heather Hiscox. And you know what, though? I was talking about being at a summer camp, and I remember we used to have the mini Olympics. I was like 10 years old. And the torch would come in, the kerosene torch, and the guy would be, you know, in a loincloth.
Which sounds really inappropriate at a camp nowadays.
Yeah, it does. But that's the thing. It was this great pageantry.
Yeah.
It was this great spectacle. He would run from the war canoe with the torch. He would light the cauldron full of kerosene on top of the baseball diamond, and our camp director would, you know, recount the words of de Coubertin, the founder of the modern games. In the Olympics, as in life, it's not the victory that matters most, but the struggle.
Yeah.
And you know, from that moment on, I loved the feeling of the Olympics, that it brought people together. It was about peace. It was about the greatest spectacle in the world. It was an event unlike any other.
You know, we're talking about sport and play and how important it is. You've actually seen that and been a part of it firsthand, watching what happens with right to play and how important it is to take sport to another part of the world. You've done it with Adam Vancouver, and Adam wanted to weigh in on tonight's show. Adam, what have you got for Scott?
Hi, George. Hi, Scott. Now, I've got a question for you, Scott. On our recent trip with Right to Play to Benin, West Africa, we drove hours into the wilderness to meet with King Agbo Man Sautin Kaponen of Ahuan Nonzun, Benin. I know this sounds like a Tintin novel, but he blessed you with his horsehair wand. Afterwards, you demanded that the rest of us lowly people on the trip refer to you as one thing and one thing only. Could you tell George and everybody how you prefer to be referred to as?
Yes, no question, Adam Vancouver. What a great traveling mate. But I am now, by the way, you can no longer look me in the eye when you pass me in the hallway.
You can't do that?
Because I am known as the King.
The King.
The King.
This guy singled you out and said you were the King.
That's right. He looked at me and, he didn't care about Perdita Feliciana, Adam Vancouver. And he looked at me and he blessed me with the horsehair. And from now on, I'm called the King.
You're King Scott Russell.
Yeah.
I love that. During Movember, have you ever considered growing a mustache back?
Growing my mustache back?
Here's why.
Yes, thank you. I knew
Please
you were going
watch.
to bring this up. This is wonderful.
Wait, watch this.
300
yeah.
road miles in the province, only
I love that.
384 are of the all-weather standard. If and when rail lines continue to disappear in the province, the Premier will be putting pressure on Ottawa.
Look at that guy.
Pressure to build more all-weather roads like this.
Now,
Scott Russell, CBC News, Summerside.
Let me ask you a question.
Prince Edward Island, that was my first job for the
That was
CBC.
your first job. Did you file that report before or after your audition for the Dukes of Hazzard?
Yeah, I know.
Which that one?
That was the day I arrived in Prince Edward Island, actually. I got there, it was 1985, and I thought I was going to have some period of adjustment. As soon as I landed, they were waiting for me, sent me out with the camera and saying, you're going to do a story for the news tonight, and there it was, mustache and all. Looked a bit like Lanny McDonald.
You look
I
a bit
thought.
like that. I actually like this one too because I mean, like I've screwed up Stroumboulopoulos before, but I love this clip here.
Good evening, I'm Scott Russell.
Let's do it one more time. Let's play it. It's too good. It's too good. Watch this again.
Good evening, I'm Scott Russell.
How old were you then?
I was probably about 28 at that time.
What was with the shifty eyes off the top?
Well, that was, you always had when you went to tape, right?
Yeah.
You would go, let's take a look at those highlights tonight, the Jays and the Cleveland Indians. And you used to go like that to the camera, right? And then when you come back on the camera, you go, what a game that was, But, yeah, that's the worst nightmare for a broadcaster. When you're on teleprompter, you can't read your own name.
Yep.
Because I've seen it happen where, hi, everybody, my name is fill in the blank, right? Because there's like
That's the thing about Anchorman, the movie, was that it was closer to the truth than many people want to admit. Yeah. Like it really was.
oh, no, there's no question.
Have you ever read a book that changed the way you lived your life?
Yes. The Great Gatsby.
What did it change?
It made me include people. Gatsby was about the classic outsider, and that in the end was his undoing. Right. And I think that we should be inclusive.
Sports Day in Canada isn't just something to talk about. There are a lot of events happening, right?
Absolutely. 1,400 events across the country. We're hoping that more than 500,000 Canadians will be involved on Sports Day in Canada. RBC is the title sponsor. They've come up with a lot, and we're in association with Participation in True Sport. And it's just a great celebration of sport as we want Canadians to get out and play.
He is the legend, Scott Russell. What a pleasure, man. Thank you.